This book is called John Henry, an American Legend. The story and the pictures are by Ezra Jack Keats. There are many versions of this story. You can find book after book after book about John Henry. This version was done by Ezra Jack Keats. He recently had commemorative postage stamps issued featuring his character from the book Snowy Day. A hush settled over the hills. The sky swirled soundlessly round the moon. The river stopped murmuring. The wind stopped whispering. And the frogs and the owls and the crickets fell silent, all watching and waiting and listening. Then the river roared. The wind whispered and whistled and sang. The frogs croaked. The owls hooted, and all the crickets chirped. "Welcome, welcome," echoed through the hills. And John Henry was born with a hammer in his hand. Bang, bang, bang rang little John Henry's hammer through the cabin as he crawled about. "What's that rascal up to now?" his mother chuckled. And before she knew it, he was big enough to help her around the house. As he grew up, he did a man's work with his father. One day, John Henry thought, "I'm taller and stronger than anyone around. It's time I went out into the world." He said goodbye to his mother and father, and off he went. He worked on farms and in cotton fields, but all that was too tame, so he got himself a job on a riverboat. One stormy night, the ship plowed through the darkness. Suddenly, the big steel rod that turned the paddle wheel broke. The wheel stopped turning. Smash went the rod through the bottom of the ship. "Pump water!" shouted the captain. "Get to port before we sink." John Henry leaped to the paddle wheel crank. He seized it, pushed, grunted, and pulled. Slowly, the giant wheel turned. With all his strength, he kept it turning. "Lord Almighty, help us," someone whispered in that long, dark night. Day broke. They sighted shore and pulled into port. A thunderous cheer went up for John Henry. Yay! John Henry felt a new excitement in the air. Men were talking of railroads being built from the Atlantic to the Pacific. "They're going to lay those tracks over rivers, across prairies and deserts, and right through mountains, and through Indian lands and stampeding buffalo herds and badlands." "Goodbye, boys," cried John Henry. "I'm going to swing me a hammer on them beautiful new tracks." "My hands are just itching to hold a hammer again," John Henry said. He tried one for size and laughed. "Sure does feel fine." How he drove those spikes, singing to the clanging of his hammer. The men joined in, their voices singing, hammers ringing. John Henry's gang was in the lead. Day after day, the tracks moved steadily westward. Rising across their path was a sprawling mountain range. Its snow-capped peaks reached high into the clouds. "We'll have to tunnel through," said his friend Little Bill. "It's awful dangerous. Could be cave-ins," someone put in. "That suits me fine," said John Henry. "Me too," added Little Bill. "Here's how we'll do it, boys," the foreman called out. "A couple of men will drive a hole into the rock. Then the powder men will put dynamite into the hole and explode it. The others will cart the loose rock away. We'll do this again and again until we have a tunnel right through this mountain. And it's going to be a real big tunnel, boys. Big enough for a giant locomotive pulling one of them long strings of trains. All right, boys, blast away. Deep into the mountain they worked. John Henry's singing echoed through the tunnel. The powder men got ready to blast more rock. They filled a hole with dynamite, put in a long fuse, and lit it. "Run, men!" cried the foreman. They all scrambled back, ready to dash clear of the blast. At that instant came a great cracking and rumbling, and the entire tunnel trembled around them. "It's a cave-in! We're trapped!" There was no place to run. The fuse burned closer to the dynamite. John Henry was nearest the fuse. He ran to put it out, but tripped and fell. "Oh, I'm hurt bad," he groaned. "I can't get up." The fuse burned further out of reach. Others rushed toward it, but they were too far away. Suddenly, John Henry remembered he still had his hammer in his hand. Down came the hammer. Smack, right on the burning tip. Oh, the fuse was out. Danger past. Sighs of relief filled the smoky tunnel. "Help me up, boys," mumbled John Henry. Clearing their way through the cave-in, the men carried him to safety. Some days later, they heard an unfamiliar clatter. Down the tunnel came a group of men with a strange machine. This is a steam drill. It can drill more holes faster than any 6 men combined, a new man bragged. Who can beat that? John Henry stepped forward. "Try me." He and Little Bill took their workplaces. John Henry gripped his hammer. Little Bill clutched his steel drill. "Check the machine," came an order. A nervous hand fell on the switch. In the dark, both sides waited for the signal to start. A hoarse voice counted. 1, 2, 3. The machine shrieked as it started. John Henry swung his hammer. The crash of steel on steel split the air. Clang! Bang! Clang! The drill got red hot in Little Bill's hands. He quickly dropped it and picked up another. His whistle! Rattle! Men frantically beat coal into the hungry, roaring engine and poured water into the steaming boiler. Whoop! Clang! Whoop! Bang! John Henry's hammer whistled as he swung it. Chug, 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 clatter, 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 rattled the machine. Hour after hour raced by. The machine was ahead. "Hand me that 20-pound hammer, Little Bill." Harder and faster crashed the hammer. Great chunks of rock fell as John Henry ripped hole after hole into the tunnel wall. The machine rattled and whistled still even faster. Doused John Henry and Little Bill with cool water to keep them going. Then John Henry took a deep breath. He picked up 2 sledgehammers and sang, "Ain't no hammer strike such fire. Strike like lightning load and I won't tire. Hammers like this, Lord, there's never been. I'll keep swinging 'em, Lord, until we win." John Henry swung both mighty hammers faster and faster. He moved so fast the men could see only a blur and sparks from his striking hammers. His strokes rang out like great heartbeats. At the other side of the tunnel, the machine shrieked, groaned, rattled, and drilled. Then all at once it shook and shuddered, wheezed, and stopped. Frantically, men worked to get the machine going again, but they couldn't. It had collapsed. John Henry's hammering still rang and echoed through the tunnel with a strong and steady beat. Suddenly, there was a great crash. Light streamed into the dark tunnel. John Henry had broken through. Wild cries of joy burst from the men. Still holding one of his hammers, John Henry stepped out into the glowing light of a dying day. It was the last step he ever took. Even the great heart of John Henry could not bear the strain of his last task. John Henry died with his hammer in his hand. If you listen to the locomotives roaring through the tunnels and across the land, yes, if you listen to those locomotives roaring through the tunnels and across the land, you'll hear them singing of that great steel-driving man, John Henry. Listen. The end. This is what it will look like if you do a search for Paul Robeson singing John Henry. Harry Belafonte has a version. Many singers and musical groups have recorded the song John Henry. But here's at least one place you can start. The URL for the YouTube video is right there on the screen, and your search for Paul Robeson will get you there. This photograph is a statue of John Henry at the Great Bend Tunnel in West Virginia. And although there are many other versions of this tale, this combination of a true story and a bit of an American legend, this one has been John Henry, an American legend, story retold, and pictures by Ezra Jack Keats.